The ocean hides things we're not meant to see, and sometimes cruise ships bring those things straight into our world. These aren't just stories you tell around a fire. What you're about to hear are true encounters collected from Reddit forums and from people who lived through them. Each one checked carefully so that nothing here is only rumor. From rooms that aren't on the map, to passengers who don't exist, to shadows that follow survivors long after the trip ends, every piece will crawl beneath your skin. This is Eerie Hour, where the dark speaks louder than the waves. So before we begin, dim the lights, hit subscribe, ring the bell icon, and leave a comment telling us which of these chilling stories stayed with you. Because once you hear them, you'll never look at the ocean the same way again. For me, the sea was always safe. I grew up near it. I worked on boats. I trusted it. But one cruise changed everything. From the moment I stepped on board, something was off. Not enough to turn back, but the air itself felt charged, like the ship was holding its breath. Around me, people laughed, music played, glasses clinked. But under it all was a weight I couldn't ignore. The first night, when the captain's voice came over the speakers, it sounded normal at first. But behind his cheerful words, just faint enough that I thought I imagined it, I heard whispering. Dozens of voices, hushed and overlapping. Then as soon as the announcement ended, silence. I told myself it was just feedback, something harmless. But the unease only grew stronger. Later, I went up to the top deck to breathe. That's when I noticed something terrifying. The ship wasn't moving. Anyone who's been at sea knows the gentle sway, the hum of the engines, the push of water below. But standing there under the stars, I felt nothing. No motion, no vibration. The ship seemed frozen in place, though the horizon was empty in every direction. I leaned over the railing to look at the water. It looked wrong. Too dark, too calm. The reflection of the ship stretched straight down, as if the ocean had no depth at all, only a black mirror. And in that reflection, faces. Not clear, not all at once, but pale shapes rippling in the water. Eyes too wide, mouths stretched open in silent screams. The moment I stepped back, they vanished. I should have gone to my cabin, locked the door, tried to sleep. But instead I whispered toward the water. If you're there, what do you want? For a long while, nothing. Then the surface rippled, though the air was still. The reflection trembled. And then the whispers returned. They surrounded me, closing in like a circle. This time, one rose above the rest. A child's voice. Don't stay. Then it was gone, leaving only the stillness, the dark, and my pounding heartbeat. That night was only the beginning, and every hour that followed dragged me deeper into something I couldn't escape. I barely slept. Each time I closed my eyes, I swore I heard knocking inside the walls. Not loud, not steady. 3 taps, then silence. Hours later, 2 taps. Then nothing until it came again. By morning, I was exhausted. But stepping into the hallway, I realized I wasn't alone. Faces pale, eyes shadowed, people avoiding each other's gaze. No one spoke, but the look said enough. Breakfast was no comfort. The buffet hall was full, but strangely quiet. People ate slowly, mechanically, every clink of glass too sharp in the silence. The crew smiled, but their smiles looked stiff, brittle, like masks. I sat with Tom and Evelyn, a couple I'd met the day before. Tom leaned in, whispering, "Did you feel it last night?" My chest tightened. "Feel what?" "The knocking," he said. Evelyn shot him a look, warning him to stop, but he continued. "We thought it was the cabin next to us, but when I checked, it was empty. No one's staying there. Empty rooms, whispers, faces in the water." My skin prickled. I laughed weakly, trying to shake it off, but Evelyn finally spoke, voice thin as air. "They don't like when you notice." The words sank into me like ice. I asked what she meant, but she only scraped her fork across the plate until the sound made my teeth ache. Tom tried to take her hand, but she pulled away, eyes down. The air between them felt heavy, charged. After breakfast, I wandered the ship, hoping distraction might help. But the more I walked, the stranger things felt. Corridors that ended in blank walls, though the map said they should loop back. Doors with no numbers. Cabins that looked fake, like painted outlines instead of real rooms. And always from deep below, a dragging scrape of metal against metal that followed wherever I went. By evening, I thought about asking the captain. But when I asked a steward where to find him, the man's smile froze. His eyes darted past me, and he said flatly, "The captain isn't to be disturbed." Then he walked away without another word. That night, I tried to record everything. I left the voice memo running as I lay in bed. Hours later, the knocking returned. 3 taps, then 2, then something else. Breathing, close, not mine. The next morning, I listened back. My blood ran cold. After the breathing faded, a whisper came. Not a child's this time. Dozens of voices, layered and distorted. They said my name. Hearing it broke something inside me. I played it over and over, desperate for it to be noise, distortion, anything else. But each time, my name was clear. At breakfast, I looked like death. And the moment I entered the dining hall, I saw Tom and Evelyn weren't there. Their seats at the back were empty, their plates untouched. I asked a server if they'd already eaten, but he only gave me that same frozen smile and said, "Passengers move on all the time." The way he said it chilled me. Move on. Not transfer. Not leave. Just move on. That's what the steward said, but I couldn't. I needed to know what happened to Tom and Evelyn. I went to their cabin. The door was wide open. Inside, everything was gone. The bed was made, no clothes, no bags, nothing at all. It looked like no one had ever stayed there. The only trace left was a faint damp smell, like seawater soaking into the carpet. My stomach turned. I stepped back into the hallway, and that's when I noticed a steward at the far end, standing perfectly still watching me. He didn't blink. I didn't wait to see what he'd do. I walked fast, heart hammering. Later that afternoon, I tried to blend in on the deck by the pool. People lounged in chairs, drinks in hand. But the air felt wrong. Nobody was laughing. Conversations were short, whispered. Most passengers just stared at the endless horizon, as if they knew the ship wasn't going anywhere. And then I saw her. On the far side of the pool, a little girl stood alone. She wore a faded blue sundress. She didn't move, didn't blink, just stared straight at me. I blinked and she was gone. My glass slipped from my hand without me realizing, cold liquid spilling down my wrist. I muttered under my breath, trying to shake it off, when a voice whispered beside me, "You shouldn't acknowledge them." I spun. Evelyn stood there. She looked pale, exhausted, but alive. She grabbed my arm, her grip sharp, painful. "Don't ask where Tom is," she said quickly, before I could speak. "Don't just listen. They're feeding on us. Every night we stay, more of us disappear. The crew knows. That's why they keep smiling. They're part of it." My throat dried as I tried to ask what she meant, but she shook her head fast, her eyes wide. "Don't talk here." Too many ears. Then just like that, she slipped into the crowd, vanishing between sun chairs. That night I locked my door, shoved a chair under the handle, and left my phone recording on the nightstand. I told myself I'd stay awake, but exhaustion pulled me under. Sometime later, I woke to the slow scrape of the chair moving. Inch by inch, it slid away from the door. I held my breath, eyes glued to the handle as it twitched. Then silence. I forced myself to check the phone recording. There it was, the scrape of the chair, a long pause, and then, so close it made my blood run cold, a whisper, "Let us in." I didn't sleep again. How could I, knowing something had stood outside, begging to be let inside? By morning I was shaking, hollow-eyed, but I knew I couldn't stay passive. Evelyn had hinted at something hidden below deck. If the crew was covering it up, that's where the answers were. I skipped breakfast. The thought of sitting in that silent dining hall with those stiff smiles made me sick. Instead, I wandered the ship, testing doors, looking for places passengers weren't supposed to go. Most were locked, but near a laundry chute on deck 3, I found a service stairwell with a sign that read, "Crew access only." My hesitation lasted only a second. I slipped inside. The air changed the moment the door closed. It was colder, heavier, carrying a wet, sour smell of mildew and salt. The stairs went down farther than I thought possible. 5 flights, 6, maybe more. The walls were damp, sweating condensation. At the bottom, I pushed open a heavy metal door into a dim corridor lit by red bulbs. Pipes ran overhead, dripping into rusty drains. And from deeper down, I heard voices, not talking, chanting. I followed the sound until I reached a wide chamber. Through a crack in the door, I saw them. Dozens of crew members stood in a circle, heads bowed, voices rising and falling together. In the center stood a huge glass tank filled with seawater. The water sloshed like something inside was moving. My blood froze when I saw the faces pressed against the glass. Distorted, pale, eyes wide in silent screams. Passengers. One of them was Tom. I staggered back, covering my mouth, bile burning my throat. The chanting grew louder, a rhythm like a heartbeat. The water surged upward, slamming against the glass, as if something enormous inside was pushing to break free. Then a hand gripped my shoulder. I spun. Evelyn. Her skin was wet, her hair sticking to her face like she'd just climbed from the ocean. "You shouldn't be here," she whispered. "They already marked you." Before I could ask what she meant, the chanting stopped. Silence filled the chamber. Slowly, every crew member turned toward the door where I hid. Their eyes caught the red glow. Glassy, not human. Evelyn shoved me back into the corridor. "Run!" she hissed. I did. I bolted up the stairwell, the sound of heavy steps closing in. The wall shook with a guttural roar that wasn't human. My lungs screamed as I reached my cabin, slammed the door, jammed the chair under the handle. The next morning when I checked my phone, the recording was corrupted. Nothing but static, until the very end, where a voice hissed my name. Now I'm back on land, but it doesn't feel like I escaped. Every night I dream of that tank, faces pressed against the glass, waiting for me. Sometimes I wake to the sound of dripping water in my apartment. Maybe Evelyn was right. Maybe I was marked. Maybe the ship doesn't let go once it chooses you. I promised myself I'd never go near the sea again. I thought stepping off the ship would end it, but fear doesn't end. It follows. The first night home, I found a single wet footprint in my hallway. Long, narrow, not mine. I told myself it was nothing, even though it hadn't rained in weeks. The second night, I woke to the sharp smell of brine. My carpet was soaked as if the sea itself had crept inside. Half asleep, I thought I saw a figure at the foot of my bed, hair drifting like it was underwater. I flicked on the lamp. Nothing there, just a trail of wet footprints leading out of the room. By the third night, I understood. The ship hadn't stayed behind. I searched my phone for proof. Most files were ruined, static and distortion, but one recording remained. The screen was black, but the audio was sharp. The same chanting, the same rushing water, and then Evelyn's voice. "You can't run. The sea always collects what it's owed." I dropped the phone, my hands shaking. The dreams are worse now. Every night I'm back in that chamber below deck, the crew circling, the water boiling, faces screaming behind the glass. Tom, others I never knew, and something bigger, darker, watching me from behind them, its eyes glowing like the deepest part of the ocean. I wake gasping, choking on the taste of salt. Sometimes I cough and feel something writhing in my throat. People say I look pale, clammy, heavy-footed, like I'm carrying a weight. They don't know the truth, that sometimes when I glance at a mirror, my reflection drips water, that sometimes it smiles when I don't. I thought I escaped that ship. Now I think I brought it with me, or maybe I never left at all. Maybe I'm still down there, trapped inside the tank, while something else wears my face on land. And if that's true, maybe you should stop watching this right now, because if I'm already gone, then it's looking at you next. Dim the lights, lock your doors, and if you dare, leave a comment telling me, what would you have done if you saw the faces in the tank? Story 2. You ever book a cruise thinking it'll be the happiest escape of your life, only to feel like you've walked right into someone else's nightmare? That's how it began for me. I thought this trip would be cocktails, sunsets, and the soft sound of waves against the ship. But there's one thing no one warns you about. Sometimes the ocean doesn't just carry laughter and tourists, it carries secrets. The first night, I stood on the deck with the wind brushing my face, feeling light, feeling free. Families around me were laughing, couples snapping photos, kids chasing after ice cream that melted faster than they could eat it. Everything was bright, alive, buzzing with joy. But even then, I kept looking back at the ship's windows. Row after row of glowing cabins. Too many windows. Too many shadows behind them. My room was 6B, mid-deck, nothing special. A simple stateroom, bed, desk, and one small, round window to the sea. Yet the second I stepped inside, my gut dropped, like I'd entered a space that wasn't mine. You know that strange feeling when a room smells like it's been waiting for you? That's what it was. I shook it off. Just nerves, excitement. I unpacked, hung a couple shirts, set my phone on the nightstand. Everything normal. Until I opened the desk drawer. Inside was a folded piece of paper, old and worn from being handled too much. At first I thought it was just a menu or a brochure, something the cruise staff left behind. But no, it wasn't glossy paper, and it wasn't typed. It was a letter, written in shaky handwriting, rushed, like someone scribbled it in fear. I'll admit, I'm curious by nature, so I opened it. The words were short and messy, but they made my chest tighten. If you're reading this, get out of cabin 6B. Do not stay the night. Do not trust the mirror. My pulse froze. My first reaction was nervous laughter. A prank, maybe? Some passenger trying to be funny? But the more I looked, the more desperate the writing felt. It wasn't a joke. I shoved the letter in my pocket and tried to steady myself. The mirror? What mirror? The only one was above the desk, a big rectangular piece of glass with a steel frame. Harmless. Just a mirror. But after that note, I couldn't glance at it without a chill running down my spine. Around midnight, after a shower, I climbed into bed. I left the lamp on because the thought of sitting in darkness with that letter in my pocket was unbearable. The hum of the engines below was steady, almost calming. My eyes were heavy, almost closed when I heard it. A tapping. Not the waves, sharper, like knuckles on glass. My head snapped toward the window. The porthole showed nothing. Only black sea. Nobody could be out there. Not in the middle of the ocean. Then again, tap, tap, tap. But this time I realized it wasn't coming from the porthole at all. It came from the mirror. I swear I saw it, the faintest ripple shivering across the glass, as though water moved behind it. And for just a blink, a pale face stared back. Not mine. Cold eyes too wide. Then gone. My heart slammed into my throat. I stumbled for the switch, flooding the room with light. The mirror was normal again, just my own wild reflection staring back. That's when the words from the letter echoed in my head. Do not trust the mirror. Any sane person would have packed their bag and demanded another room. But late at night, on a ship in the middle of the sea, who do you even tell? Excuse me, your mirror is haunted. Guest services would laugh me out of the room. So I convinced myself it was nothing. Stress, jet lag, maybe the drinks from dinner. But even as I laid back down, I knew it wasn't that simple. Because in the mirror, just for a moment, I saw the letter again. Only this time it wasn't folded in my pocket. In the reflection, it was open. The words stared back. And worse, there was a new line beneath them, written darker, angrier. You won't leave. That's when I realized the mirror wasn't just showing me. It was showing me what was coming. The next morning, sunlight spilled weakly through the porthole. For a moment, I wanted to believe it was a dream. That's how mornings work sometimes. Reality softens. But then I looked at the desk. The mirror caught the light, reflecting it across the room. Normal. Totally normal. Except for the letter. I'd left it folded in my pocket before collapsing into sleep. But there it was, lying open on the desk under the mirror. The ink looked darker, like it had been freshly written. My skin crawled. I didn't touch it. I backed away, half-dressed, my pulse racing. One thought filled my head. Leave the cabin, even just for a while. So I did. I rushed to the upper deck. The ship was alive with laughter, children splashing, servers carrying drinks, couples lounging in the sun. Bright, noisy, safe. I told myself it was safe. The contrast was maddening. The joyful world above, the cold dread below in 6B. I caught myself studying people's faces, wondering, had they ever found notes like mine? Had they seen things in their mirrors? But no one else looked touched by it. Everyone looked carefree. Still, the thought ate at me. So I told someone. Her name was Julia, mid-30s, sharp smile, traveling alone. We'd met quickly at the buffet the night before. She had mentioned she liked strange stuff. Her words, not mine. Ghost tours, podcasts, haunted Reddit stories. So when I spotted her at the railing with a coffee, the words spilled out. The letter, the mirror, the tapping. I braced for laughter. Instead, she leaned closer, eyes narrowing like I'd confirmed something. "You're in cabin 6B?" she asked too quickly, too surely. My stomach nodded. "Yeah, why?" She put her coffee down slowly. "I read about that cabin 2 years ago. A man vanished from it. The crew said he fell overboard, but the last place anyone saw him was in front of the mirror." My skin went cold. Julia's voice dropped lower. "Some say his roommate found a note too. Just like yours, I wanted to dismiss it. Call it coincidence." But her voice trembled, and she wasn't shocked. She'd expected it. That night, I avoided my room as long as I could. I stayed out late, watched a live show, wandered aimlessly, drank too much. But exhaustion always wins. Eventually, I had to go back. The hallway toward cabin 6B was darker than the rest, a bulb above flickering weakly. I slid my key card, stepped inside, and froze. The mirror. I don't know how else to say it. It felt alive. The surface shimmered faintly in the low light, almost like it was breathing. I forced myself not to stare at it as I kicked off my shoes and slid into bed. My plan was simple. Keep the lights on, stay awake as long as I could. But at 2:17 a.m., I woke up to the sound of footsteps. Not outside in the hallway, inside my cabin. I froze as the captain's voice spread across the chamber, low and steady. "You shouldn't be here, but the ship has chosen you. Everyone it touches is never gone. You will see. You will serve." The water surged upward, forming hands, long and cold, clawing their way toward me. I stumbled backward, but the floor seemed to shift under me, twisting so that my feet were forced closer to the pool. Panic surged through me. I snatched a lantern from the wall and swung it wildly, desperate to break whatever this was. The shadows hissed and pulled back for a moment, but then rushed at me again, faster, stronger. That was when I realized the awful truth. The ship wasn't just eating people. It was feeding on attention, fear, awareness. Every time I looked at the shadows, every beat of my terrified heart made it stronger. Then I saw it, my own face forming in the water. My skin pale, my eyes wide, my mouth locked in a silent scream, my chest clenched. I knew if I stayed another second, I would be swallowed whole. I bolted up the stairs, running through corridors that twisted longer with every step. The whispers chased me, curling into my ears, tugging at my thoughts. Behind me, the chanting grew louder, almost celebratory, like the ship was laughing at my fear. I burst onto the main deck, gasping, sweat and salt soaking my clothes. The horizon was black, storm clouds swirling endlessly, lightning splitting the sea into sharp flashes. The ship groaned like it was alive, bending against the waves. I didn't know if I would survive until morning. Every instinct screamed at me to run, to hide. But the truth struck me. The ship was everywhere, the air, the wind, the water. It had already claimed me. I never slept that night. Every creak, every splash, every whisper outside my porthole reminded me the aurora tide knew I was awake. My reflection in the mirror stared back at me, pale, hollow-eyed, lips pressed like it wanted to warn me. There's no escape. By dawn, I made a plan. I needed proof, something real to take back, something no one could ignore. My camera had survived. I stuffed it into my bag and started for the lower decks, determined to capture what I had seen. But the ship wasn't the same. Hallways bent into impossible angles. Staircases twisted downward. Doors appeared where none had been. The chanting hummed again, faint at first, then building with my pulse. I followed it, crouching low, dodging the crew who glided instead of walking, their black eyes unblinking, their lips pulled into endless smiles. They didn't speak, but the silence in their presence was a warning. I had crossed into a place no passenger was meant to find. The chamber was alive when I entered. The ritual had already begun. The pool in the center glowed faintly, throwing sickly light across the walls. Hundreds of faces swam beneath its surface, mouths opening in wordless cries. Long hands of water clawed upward, twisting as if begging for help. These weren't illusions. They were real. Bound to the ship, chained by fear and ritual. My stomach dropped. The captain's gaze cut through the crowd. He didn't shout or move quickly. He just raised one hand, and the pool surged in answer. Water lunged toward me like jaws snapping shut. I scrambled aside, stumbling close to the edge, my camera hitting the ground, capturing faces and shadows in blurred streaks. The captain's voice carried softly but with force. "You shouldn't be here. But now that you are, you can either serve or vanish." I understood then. This wasn't about killing. It was about surrender. The ship didn't need mercy. It demanded obedience. I remembered a line from the journal. The ship's offerings were chosen by fear and acknowledgement. It thrived on being noticed. If I ignored it, if I pretended it wasn't real, maybe I could survive. But if I fought, if I resisted, it would consume me whole. So I tried. I crouched low, keeping my eyes away from the crew, moving along the walls. Quietly, I whispered to myself again and again, "You don't exist. You don't exist. You don't exist." The shadows wavered. The chanting broke rhythm. The faces in the water writhed, unsettled, as if confused. The pool pulsed slower. For a moment I thought I had tricked it, but then a sound rolled through the chamber, a deep, terrible laugh. The captain stepped closer, the water rising with him like a heartbeat. His black eyes pierced into mine. "You think you can hide? The ship already owns you." My throat tightened. Panic flared. But I clutched my camera and fired the flash again and again. The light cracked across the chamber. For a breath, the shadows drew back, recoiling, the water spraying violently. I ran. I sprinted through halls that warped and stretched, stairways that led nowhere, corridors folding back into the chamber itself. The ship twisted into a maze, trapping me in its body. Every path ended in darkness, in whispers, in reaching hands. At last, I forced open a small service door on the lowest deck. A narrow stairwell, barely wide enough to crawl, led upward. I climbed, lungs burning, adrenaline driving me. Behind me, the chanting rose again, louder, furious. A storm of voices joined as one. My ears rang with it. I dragged myself onto the upper deck, collapsing under the black sky. The sea stretched without end. No land, no rescue, only chaos in every direction. Lightning struck, waves slammed. My body shook with exhaustion, but I knew the truth now. The aurora tide didn't care if I escaped. It could wait forever. It would follow me anywhere, whispering, remembering, and I would carry it always. The chanting echoed still, lingering in my head. The faces pressed into the water burned into my sight. Some ships never let their passengers go. I didn't dare close my eyes. Every shadow moved. Every gust of wind carried a voice. My hands shook as I lifted the camera, scrolling through the photos. Faces glared back. People I had never met. Crew with eyes like voids, broken reflections of me caught in glass. The sun sank, painting the sea blood red. The aurora tide groaned, its frame bending, breathing in time with my fear. A low hum rose in my chest, matching the pulse of the ship. I tried to run, but the deck stretched, bending, twisting under me. The horizon fell away into endless black. Shapes rose from the water. Faces I almost recognized, pleading eyes half-formed. They hovered. They reached, but they never touched. They were showing me what awaited. A shadow formed behind me. The captain stood still, calm, unhurried. "You cannot leave," he said. "The ship remembers. It chooses. And now it has chosen you." I spun and ran toward the bow. Waves licked the sides, forming hands of water, their faces twisted into masks of pain. Every step brought them closer, feeding the hunger of the ship. And then I realized, escape wasn't about distance. It was about surrender. The aurora tide wanted obedience. It had already bound me with fear. I felt the pull before I saw it. My legs buckled as the deck rippled, forming a pool of mirrored water. My reflection stared up at me. Not myself, but a pale, hollow-eyed version smiling in silence. The captain extended a hand. "It's easier if you accept it," he said. "Some fight. Some surrender. Either way, the ship keeps them. But those who surrender, endure." The pool surged upward, icy hands wrapping around my legs. I screamed, thrashing, but the deck itself bent beneath me, spiraling into a staircase that led nowhere. The chanting thundered, filling my head, rattling my bones. And then silence. I opened my eyes to calm seas, sunlight, the ship pristine against the horizon. I could breathe again. For a moment I thought I had made it. Then I saw the logbook open on my desk. A single line had been added in fresh ink. "Laya Martinez taken." A knock came at the door. 3 slow, steady taps. My blood froze. The porthole fogged, and through the mist I saw her, my reflection, but not mine. Hollow eyes, pale skin, lips curled into a smile that wasn't mine. I knew the truth then. I hadn't escaped. I had only changed. The aurora tide never frees its passengers. It never will. And when new travelers board tomorrow, it will already be waiting. "Welcome aboard." My panic was feeding it. The captain appeared behind me, calm as always. "Understanding comes too late," he said. "Some fight, some surrender." Both served the ship the same. I raised my camera, snapping pictures of the journal and the glowing pool, hoping the flash might break the spell. For a second it worked. Faces pulled back, shapes rippled, the chanting faltered. But then the water lunged forward, rising like a living thing, pulling at me. I fought, trying to get away, but the hallways bent out of shape. Doors melted into walls. Stairs stretched forever, winding with no end. The storm outside raged, matching the madness within. The ship was no longer wood and metal. It was alive, twisting reality itself into a trap. Fear clawed at me, but desperation forced me to think. I remembered the journal's words. The ship fed on fear, on being seen, on being recognized. If I could stay calm, if I could deny it the satisfaction, maybe I could survive. I whispered to myself like a prayer. "You are not here. You are not seen. You do not exist." The shadows froze. The chanting slipped out of rhythm. The faces in the pool wavered, twisting with doubt. I inched backward, careful not to meet their eyes, until I found a service ladder bolted to the wall. My hands shook, but I climbed, every rung a fight against unseen hands dragging me down. At last I emerged onto the observation deck. The sea stretched wide, but the storm had swallowed everything. Waves smashed against the hull. Lightning split the sky, and in those flashes I saw shapes under the water. Human forms, floating, watching. Then I understood. Escape wasn't about distance. It wasn't about hiding. The ship never let anyone go. The only chance was to outlast it, to trick it, to resist its hunger with will alone. But the ship was patient. It would wait forever. I had survived for now, but the whispers had sunk into my head. They twisted around my thoughts, reminding me that the eternal horizon always waited, always watching, and when it chose again, it would be final. The storm rose higher, monstrous waves slamming over the deck, lightning carving the sky, the silver shards. I clutched the journal and my camera, heart pounding, knowing the ship was inside my mind, watching every flicker of fear. The whispers grew louder, repeating my name, promising that one slip was all it needed to claim me. I staggered through the corridors, but there was nowhere safe. Hallways stretched endlessly, stairs looped back onto themselves, shadows bent light into shapes that shouldn't exist. Beneath it all, I felt the heartbeat of the ship itself, pulsing with hunger, growing stronger with every ounce of fear I failed to smother. I tried to resist. I tried to fight. But then I felt water creeping along my boots, cold and alive, crawling up my legs. Faces pushed through the surface. Passengers I had seen vanish. Crew with eyes like pits, all reaching, their mouths opening and closing in silent pleas. At the far end of the deck, the captain appeared again, calm, steady, unblinking. His eyes pierced mine. "You can't escape. You are already part of the cycle." The words from the journal came back. Acknowledgement was power. If I denied my fear, denied what I saw, maybe I could last. I whispered my mantra again, soft but steady. "You do not exist. You are not here. You are nothing." The water slowed. The shadows wavered. The storm paused as if the ship itself was considering me. I stepped forward, ignoring the reaching hands, my heart pounding so loud it drowned the whispers for a moment. But then the pool in the center of the deck rippled, and I saw it, my reflection staring back. Not me, but a pale double, eyes hollow, lips curled in a quiet smile. The truth struck me like lightning. This was my fate if I surrendered, to become part of the ship itself, a voice in its chorus, another hollow face beneath the waves. I stumbled back, slipping on the wet deck, and the water surged higher, wrapping cold hands around me. I screamed, but my voice was swallowed by the storm, by the whispers, by the living consciousness of the ship. The deck bent, twisting into a staircase spiraling down into endless dark. I fell, dragged into nothing. Then, suddenly, light. Sun pierced the clouds. The sea was calm. The ship gleamed as though none of it had happened. My chest heaved. Relief shook me. Maybe I had survived. But when I reached my cabin, I saw the logbook open on my desk. One new line in wet black ink. Marcus Hale taken. 3 soft knocks tapped at my door. Steady, patient. I turned toward the porthole. The glass fogged, and a face stared back. My face, but wrong. Hollow eyes, a smile that wasn't mine. I knew the truth. Survival wasn't freedom. The ship had already claimed me. My fear, my thoughts, my awareness, all part of it now. The eternal horizon waits, endless, patient. And when it hungers again, it will take another. Welcome aboard. Story 4. I thought cruises were supposed to be relaxing. Sun, sea, and a week away from life's chaos. My name is Naomi Chen. I'm a travel vlogger from Los Angeles, and I booked the Celestial Wave to film glittering interiors and exotic ports for my channel. I wanted sunsets, laughter, a touch of luxury, not nightmares. The first night the ship looked like a dream. Chandeliers sparkled like stars. The polished decks glowed in the sunset. The crew welcomed passengers with flawless smiles. I filmed everything, cheerful narration on my lips, not noticing how shadows lingered too long in the corners. By nightfall, something strange stirred. A low humming rose from the lower decks. It wasn't engines, wasn't waves, but a note that buzzed inside my ribs. Curious, I picked up my camera and followed. The corridors bent strangely, twisting into new shapes. Doors I had passed earlier were gone, replaced with tight passages leading to dim-lit rooms. Shadows flickered, moving against the light, forming human shapes that melted when I turned my eyes. In one room I found a theater, abandoned yet untouched. Red velvet seats faced a stage where one spotlight glowed. On the stage stood a puppet, human-sized, dressed like a captain, its eyes black pits. Its head tilted toward me. Its lips didn't move, but I heard it whisper, "You're next." My breath froze. I stumbled back. The walls groaned, the lights flickered, and the humming deepened, voices layered into one sound. I told myself it was my nerves, but my camera proved otherwise. It caught what I couldn't see, shadows shifting, whispers caught in the air, movement just beyond my sight. When I returned to my cabin, my stomach dropped. My footage was wrong. It showed places I hadn't filmed, endless corridors, faceless passengers, and reflections of myself smiling with eyes that weren't mine. Then came the knock. 3 slow, deliberate taps on my door. My blood ran cold. No one should have been there. I crept to the peephole. The hallway was empty. Still, the knocking continued, steady from the other side. My skin chilled with the realization. The celestial wave wasn't just a ship. It was alive, aware, and it had turned its attention to me. That night I lay awake, the camera clutched to my chest while the humming swelled into a rhythm that shook the walls. Shadows slid across the cabin, joining, twisting, merging. My porthole darkened. My reflection looked back, but it wasn't me. It smiled, lifting a hand, beckoning. I understood then. Once the ship noticed you, there was no undoing it. The celestial wave didn't sail. It waited. It watched. And it chose. Sleep never came. Every groan of wood, every brush of wind against the glass was its voice. By dawn, I made a choice. I needed answers. I grabbed my camera and went to the lower decks, following the same humming that had haunted me since the first night. The air grew thick, damp with rot and salt. Corridors shifted again, warping into paths I didn't recognize. Stairs appeared where none should have been. Doors opened into rooms that couldn't exist. My flashlight trembled in my hand, its beam caught in shadows bending at impossible angles. Then, in a wide storage room, I froze. Dozens of puppets lined the shelves, identical to the one from the stage. Each wore the same captain's uniform, or crew attire, their eyes hollow and unblinking. I stepped closer, heart in my throat. One tilted its head, just slightly, as if acknowledging me. My camera captured movement I couldn't see with my eyes. Then came the whispers, clear as speech now, layered voices pressing against my ears. "You're next. Join us." The voices surrounded me, coming from the walls, the floor, even the air itself. I spun around, heart pounding, and realized the shadows were alive. They stretched toward me, fingers clawing at the empty space. Suddenly, I felt a pull dragging me toward the center of the deck, toward a round hatch I had noticed before. The floor rippled like water, bending as if the ship itself was forcing me forward. I tried to fight it, but every step seemed inevitable. When I opened the hatch, I saw a chamber full of black water, rippling unnaturally. Faces floated beneath the surface. Vanished passengers, eyes hollow, mouths forming silent pleas. The puppets stood along the edges, their hands raised as if conducting the pool like an orchestra. At the center, I saw it, my own reflection. Pale, eyes empty, lips curved into a silent smile. My stomach twisted. The ship didn't just trap bodies. It trapped minds, presence, identity. The captain appeared then, walking calmly, his footsteps echoing. "Resistance only strengthens the ritual," he said quietly. "You can flee, but the ship always takes what it wants." Panic flared in my chest, but I forced myself to remember the journal. It had spoken of survival, denying fear, denying recognition. I whispered the words under my breath. I am not here. I do not exist. You cannot see me. The water slowed. The shadows faltered. The puppets paused, frozen for a moment as though confused. I edged backward, careful not to meet the eyes of the figures, until I found a ladder leading up. I climbed quickly, heart racing. Above, the storm mirrored the chaos below. Lightning slashed across the sky. Waves pounded the hull. Yet for a breath, I felt safer. That's when the truth sank in. The celestial wave didn't kill immediately. It fed slowly, on fear, on recognition. Survival was possible only by hiding from its attention. But the ship was patient. It waited, always choosing when to claim. On the upper deck, no comfort waited. Waves smashed against the ship, lightning splitting the horizon in jagged silver shards. My hands shook around the camera, flashlight beam darting. Shadows stretched unnaturally, merging with rain and wind. I realized the ship wasn't just in the lower decks. It was everywhere, pressing in from every shadow, every reflection. Then they came, the puppets. They crawled from corners, glided along railings, slid across the wet floor, their hollow eyes fixed on me, their movements smooth like liquid. Behind them, the captain's shadow moved, steady, unyielding, guiding it all. I tried to run, but the deck warped beneath me. Steps looped back, corridors stretched forever. The wind whispered my name. Panic clawed inside me, but I forced my breath steady. I whispered again. I do not exist. You cannot see me. One puppet slid toward me, hand out, wooden fingers bending with sharp cracks. My camera flashed, and for a moment, the puppet recoiled. But the shadows surged harder, multiplying. The water spilled up from below, curling over the deck. Liquid fingers reaching. Faces shimmered within, mouths open in silent screams. The ship was twisting not just the world, but my mind, building nightmares to break me before it consumed me. I stumbled backward, gripping the railing as the storm raged harder. Lightning flashed, and in the porthole I saw myself, pale, hollow-eyed, smiling calmly. My chest clenched. That was what I'd become if I lost. Then I noticed a small hatch near the stern, almost hidden. Maybe an exit, maybe a trap. I had no choice but to try. I ran. The puppets slid after me, chasing like liquid shadows. The hatch opened into a narrow hallway lined with mirrors. Every reflection showed me, but wrong. Dozens of versions, pale, smiling, all reaching. My pulse hammered. The ship was mocking me, showing what I'd become. I kept my eyes down, muttering the mantra over and over. I pushed through until I burst onto the side deck. Rain lashed my face. Wind tore at me. For the first time, the open sea spread before me, black and endless. No shadows followed. The puppets stopped at the threshold. Through the storm, the captain's voice whispered, "You endure for now." I collapsed to the deck, shaking, soaked, barely breathing. I had survived, but survival was only temporary. The celestial wave didn't just take bodies. It lingered, waiting, always watching. And I knew one day it would claim me fully. The storm raged, the ocean roared, the ship watched. The storm never ended. Lightning carved the sky, thunder rolling like a beast's growl. I clutched my camera to my chest, heart hammering so loud I swore the ship could hear it. The celestial wave was everywhere, not just around me, but inside me. I felt it probing, whispering, testing. The side deck narrowed, twisting into a corridor that shouldn't exist. Shadows stretched into human forms that mirrored my every move. Each step felt forced, chosen by the ship. The puppets appeared again, sliding from the walls, hollow eyes fixed on me. I whispered the mantra, "You cannot see me. I do not exist." For a moment, the shadows slowed. The water pulled back. I thought I had won. But then came the mirror room again. Smaller now, yet packed with reflections. Dozens of me, pale, smiling, eyes empty. I tried to turn away, but every exit bent back. Puppets circled the mirrors, bending the reflections, showing futures I didn't want. In all of them, the storm raged, the ocean pulsed, the ship ruled. At the far end, the captain appeared, eyes black, voice calm. You can resist, you can survive, but the ship always claims. Every passenger becomes part of the chorus. It is inevitable. A hand of water shot from the mirrors, seizing my ankle. I screamed, stumbling, almost falling into the reflective pool. My camera flashed, capturing the whirl of water, puppets reaching, my reflection smiling. The ship was teaching me, resistance delayed, but never prevented. I bolted blindly, whispering the mantra until it broke on my lips. Puppets multiplied, mirrors twisted, showing infinite versions of me, each more broken than the last. Then came the final truth. The ship didn't just feed on fear, it fed on identity. Every person lost became part of it. Their self dissolved into its endless hunger. At last, I collapsed on the upper deck, drenched, gasping. The storm stilled slightly. The puppets slipped into the shadows, their hollow eyes still watching. The captain's voice, soft, certain, carried on the wind. Endurance is only temporary. Acceptance is forever. I turned to the porthole. My reflection stared back, pale, hollow-eyed, smiling. For the first time, I knew I wasn't free. I had survived the night, yes, but the ship had already claimed me. My mark was set. I would never leave without becoming part of its ritual, another piece of the celestial wave. The storm roared, the waves slammed, and the puppets waited. The ship's hunger was endless, its patience eternal, and I was its next tale. Welcome aboard. Music. Story 5. I never believed in haunted ships until I boarded the Oblivion Star. My name is Daniel Ortiz. I'm a documentary filmmaker from Miami, used to chasing storms, myths, and abandoned places. I signed up for this luxury cruise to film a lifestyle special, never expecting to document a nightmare. The first night, the ship was dazzling. Neon lights shimmered across the decks, orchestral music drifted from the ballroom, and laughter mixed with the salt air. Camera in hand, I filmed everything, narrating cheerfully. It was perfect. Too perfect. Around midnight, I noticed something wrong. Cabin 1313, a room long decommissioned, was lit. A shadow flickered behind the curtains, moving in rhythm like a ritual. When I approached, the door was locked, yet faint chants drifted from inside. My curiosity silenced my caution. I filmed from the hallway, zooming in. Faces appeared behind the window. Passengers I had never seen before. Their eyes were hollow, their lips moving as if in silent prayers. Then, as quickly as they appeared, they were gone. The door swung open on its own, showing nothing but empty darkness. The corridors began to twist unnaturally. Stairwells bent in strange directions. Walls shifted and hallways curved back into themselves like a maze. The crew smiled politely when I passed them, but in their eyes was something unsettling, as though they knew a secret they would never say out loud. One stewardess whispered softly as she passed me, "Don't go near 1313. It chooses." I returned to my cabin, reviewing the footage with shaking hands. On screen, shadows moved where none had been. Whispers overlapped my own narration, one phrase repeating over and over. "Join us." Sleep became impossible. Every creak of the wood, every gust of wind against the porthole sounded like a warning. And then the truth struck me with a weight that made my chest tighten. The ship wasn't just haunted, it was alive. It was watching. It was choosing. By dawn, I had a plan. I would go to 1313, film everything, and try to understand what it wanted. But deep inside, I already knew curiosity here came with a price. The Oblivion Star never allowed questions without consequences. I could feel it waiting, patient, pulling me in. Cabin 1313 was calling, a low vibration inside my chest. With camera steady, I crept through the twisting corridors. Every step echoed unnaturally, as though the ship itself repeated them back. The walls stretched long, staircases circled back, and shadows crept along the rails as if guiding me. When I reached the cabin, the door was slightly open. A sharp metallic scent spilled out, mingling with the salty air. My flashlight beam flickered across the room. The floor was wet, reflecting the pale light. At the center lay a circle of water, perfectly still and black. Faces appeared beneath the surface, passengers I had seen earlier. Some smiled faintly, others screamed in silence. Around the pool, puppets dressed in crew uniforms stood motionless, eyes empty, hands moving in gestures that felt ritualistic. My breath shook, but I lifted the camera, zooming in. The pool rippled. My own reflection stared back, but wrong. Eyes hollow, skin pale, mouth curled into a mocking smile. The whispers rose, calling my name. My stomach turned cold. Panic burned through me, but I forced my breathing steady. Then without sound, the captain stepped into the room. His shoes pressed against the wet floor, but no splash came. "You shouldn't have come," he said softly, "but now that you're here, watch closely. The ship chooses, and the chosen serve." The water burst upward, shaping into hands that reached for me. I stumbled backward, camera shaking in my grip. The puppets began to advance. The shadows along the walls twisted, leaning toward me. The ship was alive, feeding on the act of being seen, on the fear in every breath. I remembered advice hidden in the strange notes from my earlier footage. Denial delayed it. Whispering quickly, I recited, "I am nothing. You cannot see me." The watery hands froze midair. The shadows trembled as though confused. For a breath, it worked. I backed into the hallway, but the ship had shifted again. Doors opened to nowhere. Staircases spiraled endlessly. Whispers followed, louder, closer. Cabin 1313 glowed faintly behind me, like a reminder that it wasn't finished with me. That's when the true horror became clear. The ship didn't trap only bodies. It trapped awareness itself. It fed on those who looked, who recorded, who feared. Tonight I realized I was already marked. Even as I reached the upper deck, the whispers didn't stop. They were inside me. "Join us. Join us." I knew now survival wasn't about running. It was about hiding, about pretending to be invisible, hoping the ship would lose interest. But patience was never its weakness. The storm above gave me no comfort. Lightning ripped across the sky. Waves slammed the hull with bone-rattling force. My flashlight cut through the rain, but every shadow seemed alive, sliding along the walls, melting into the storm. Then I saw them, the puppets, rows of them gliding silently across the rails and climbing walls. Their empty eyes locked onto me. Behind them, the captain's shadow flitted quietly, always present. I tried to run, but the deck bent and folded, paths circling back to the same cursed spot. Panic clawed my chest, but I held my breath steady and muttered, "I do not exist. You cannot see me." Then the water surged again, crawling along the deck like icy fingers. Faces shimmered within it, mouths opening in silent screams. I realized the ship bent more than space. It bent thought, bending reality itself into a trap. I stumbled toward the observation deck. In the porthole, I caught my reflection, pale, hollow-eyed, smiling. My body shivered. That was my fate unless I found a way to resist. A hatch appeared at the stern, narrow, almost hidden. I bolted for it. The puppets glided after me, their movements impossibly smooth. The ship itself pulsed as though guiding me, daring me to continue. I pulled open the hatch and stepped into a long corridor of mirrors. Reflections filled every surface, showing dozens of me, each pale, each smiling, each trapped. The puppets drifted among the mirrors, their hands twisting the reflections, showing me futures that felt inevitable. My chest pounded, fear clawing its way up my throat. Reality itself was the weapon here. I shut my eyes, whispering the mantra faster and faster. When I opened them, the water had stilled, the puppets frozen. Carefully, I edged forward, step by step, until the door at the end gave way. I stumbled out onto the side deck. Rain struck my face. Wind ripped at my clothes. The open sea stretched out, black and endless. For the first time, shadows didn't follow. I collapsed, gasping, drenched, trembling. I had survived, but only for now. The oblivion star didn't strike quickly. It waited. It watched. It chose carefully. And I knew it had chosen me. The storm raged harder. Waves slammed the hull. Lightning tore the sky apart. The voices of the ship swelled, carried by the wind. I gripped my camera, realizing survival was never about escape. It was about staying unseen. But the side deck twisted again, narrowing into another corridor of mirrors. Every reflection showed me hollow, pale, smiling. Puppets glided along the walls, their movements fluid and wrong. At the far end, the captain's shadow loomed, calm, eyes locked on me. A hand of water struck up from below, seizing my ankle. In its depths, faces of the vanished passengers screamed silently, trapped forever. Then I understood. The Oblivion Star didn't just take bodies. It claimed awareness, identity, consciousness itself. Every person who watched, who recorded, became part of its ritual.